Long resting versus short resting. I think a lot of people short rest versus long rest, and that's fine, but there are a lot of different decision points that you need to account for when you're deciding whether you should long rest or short rest. And long resting is definitely better in a decent amount of situations. So I'm just going to go through some beginner tips so that you can apply these tips and it will help with your thought process as to whether long resting or short resting is going to be most effective. Okay, let's get started. My first tip is, scenario length and how many cards your class has. For a 9-card class, you should be long resting more. You've got to make sure to preserve those turns. And long resting, you don't actually play a card. And so when you don't play a card, that gives you more longevity. Yes, you're less effective that turn, but overall, you're going to have more longevity so that you can make sure to make it to the end of the scenario when things generally get really tough, and you can help out your party. So yeah, make sure, take a look at the scenario length and make sure that if you're a low card class, that you're using long rest strategically to buy yourself just that little bit extra time. Next tip is to decide whether you're going to use consume items or you're going to use spend items. Because if you have all consume items, long resting becomes much less valuable. If you have a bunch of spend items, then long resting can become extremely valuable. And as you get up through a few prosperity levels, more options will open up. But I think you want to generally play mostly to one strategy, mostly consume or mostly spend, and that will help you make decisions on long resting or short resting. My next tip is understanding your cards and your card combos. So some classes, they may only have one really powerful card that you don't want to get rid of. And so you don't have to worry about short resting. Like take the Spell Weaver. In a vacuum, let's just say you only care about Reviving Ether. Anytime Reviving Ether comes up, you just take that point of damage and you pick another card. And then you have to take that card though, right? So this is where it becomes a problem. Say you're running a class that's maybe slightly more reliant on combos or reliant on more than one card. You can get yourself in big trouble where you're in your first rest cycle and you pull up one of your critical cards and you're like, no, I don't want to throw that away. I'm going to take a point of damage. Then your other critical card comes up and you're like, ah, and you are nerfed for the rest of the scenario. So a class that, relies on combos, you should be long resting more so that you can preserve those combos, because it's really easy to, start throwing away cards that make sense for you when you short rest, especially if the first one you don't like and you take the damage and the second one is just as bad. And then all of a sudden your combos start falling apart and you become much less effective. For some of these classes, it's better to long rest and give yourself that decision point where you can go, okay, I'm going to throw away this card. I don't need it right now. I'm going to preserve my core combos so that I can be super effective for the entire scenario. And very often preserving those combos is worth taking the turn off. Next tip, just make sure you're calculating all the things that are going to be good for you when you long rest versus short rest. I think it's really easy to get caught in the trap of, I don't want to take a turn off. I want to make sure and just keep hammering on things. But a long rest can be really effective in between rooms when there's no monsters to kill. And then you've got to take into account some other factors, right? Like I said, are you preserving card combos? Are you getting rid of poison and wound? Do you have a lot of spend items? If you can check off a few of those boxes, a long rest is very often going to be more powerful for you in the long run. And if you have a lot of spend items, it's really nice just to be able to unload, spend all your items, and then get them all back. And very often having that freedom to unload a lot of your items is going to be worth the turn that you're not dishing out damage when you're long resting. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you can, please go ahead, hit that like button. It really helps me out a lot. And subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so that when I publish new content, you're notified. It's the little bell that's going to turn on notifications. And also, I work with Noble Knight Games. They have the largest selection of games in the world. If you're looking for rare stuff, out of print stuff, really anything, they've got a ridiculous selection. They've got free shipping on any order over $149 in the United States. And so yeah, if you're looking for stuff from your childhood, you're looking for, you know, collectible card games, Magic, Dungeons and Dragons, board games, you name it, they've got it. I've got a link down in the description. If you click on that link, I get paid a small commission, and I really need your help and support to continue to put out great content. Okay, let's move on to my good to know tips about long resting and short resting. Summons still act when you're long resting. Yep, they're still going to go about doing your thing, and because you're long resting and your initiative is 99, they're basically going to be slower than any of your allies, and so just make sure your allies are equidistant to the monsters and your summons won't get focused on even if they're out there attacking. Really useful tip to still be effective while you're long resting. My next good to know tip is items can be used while you long rest. And so if you've got an unrefreshed item that you want to use for whatever reason, you can actually use it and refresh it on the same turn so that it's being used up and not wasted. So yeah, you refresh items during your turn and you can actually play an unused item before that. My next good to know tip is if you have armor and you still have 1 charge remaining, 2 charges remaining, whatever it is, your long rest is not going to refresh that. So just make sure that you've used up all the charges before you long rest so that when you long rest, you actually get that item back. My next good to know tip is if you are stunned, you can still long rest. You can long rest, you can put your initiative at 99 so you have a lower chance of being focused on by the monsters. You can also refresh items and get 2 hit points back, all while being stunned. So make sure you use that to your advantage. When long resting, make sure that you're not going to take fatal damage, because if you have no cards in your hand and you take fatal damage, you're going to have to lose 2 cards from your discard pile to negate that damage instead of 1 if you had it in your hand. Be very careful. Once in a while, if you're not paying attention, you can get caught like this, or if an ally does something that you're not expecting and all of a sudden you're the monster focus when you're long resting, it can end your scenario very quickly. So, hope these tips helped. Thank you so much for watching the video.